All right, let's learn today a sikha from the Rebbe. It is in Yiddish. Some people don't understand Yiddish, but you'll understand English. And surprisingly, there's the last few weeks there have been a lot of viewers, and in this, and I can't find the download on in Hebrew. So, but anyway, this is good. Let's go. Wegen Heinteke Shabbos, regarding this week's Shabbat. This week's Shabbat is called Shabbat Chazon. We talked about this. We even learned the Haftorah. Right? We learned it in class. Is Faran Avort, there's a saying from Rev Akodesh, Rev Levi Yitzchak Berditchev. As b'Shabbos Chazon, the Shabbos Chazon, veist man dem Beis Hamikdash L'Shlishi, that it is shown to us the third temple. Nor does is Zen from their Weitert. It's you see it from far away. Re'iyah mirachok. Was das is their inyan from Shabbos Chazon. That's the whole idea why it's called Shabbat Chazon, because that's not the whole reason why. The Haftorah of this week is the beginning of the book of Isaiah, Chazon Yishayahu, and therefore it's called Shabbat Chazon after the Haftorah. But Rav Levi Yitzchak Berditchev said it's called after the Shabbat because of the other Shabbos. Like for instance, you have Shabbos Shuva. So some people say it's called Shabbos Shuva because you're doing Shuva, even though the portion, the Haftorah is Shuva Yisrael. And so he said this is relevant to what happens on the Shabbos. More important than the fact that we're reading this particular Haftorah called Shabbat Chazon, as even more important is that we are shown the third temple. Loidem vetmen verstehen. We will understand the sheikhus from Shabbos Chazon to Parshas Devorim. What's the connection between Shabbat Chazon and the book of Deuteronomy? And the first portion of that book, the first reading of that book, is called Parshat Devorim. It's also called Parshat Deuteronomy. I don't know if that's what it's called, but it's called Devorim anyway. The book is called Devorim, and the first Torah portion is called Devorim, which, according to Shabbat Chazon, always comes out reading this first chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, book of Devorim. Mit Parshas Devorim, Hoibzechan Mishnah Torah. With Parshat Devorim, we begin the book of Deuteronomy, where Moses basically repeats the first four books. That's what it's called, Deuteronomy. Moshe repeats the first four books. He adds a lot of things. A lot of things are added, or rather, God adds a lot of things through him. But nevertheless, it's the repetition. Vos Chachas is Dach in Torah, because even though it's in the Torah, Dach is Andrish. Here it's different. Mishnah Torah is a little bit different from all the previous four books of the Torah. Darmid was Mishnah Torah because Mishnah Torah is said by the generation of us is arangegangen into the land which was going into the land of Israel. The previous four books were said to the generation of Jews that left Egypt but did not go into the land of Israel, right? Most of them. Therefore, Hatman, Gedarft, Bavarnan, Gevazen, and Yani. Therefore, in any case, the book of Devorim for sure was said to all the Jews that were about to go into the land of Israel. Right? It was just said several months before they went in to the land of Israel. 6 months, 7 months? Was freer Hatman and they nit Gedarft, Bavarnan. These are things which the Jews did not have to know earlier, and now when they're coming into the land of Israel, there's last minute important instructions. Good. What's the difference between the generation that was in the desert and the generation that was coming to the land of Israel was Dora Midbar is Gaven Dordea. The generation that was in the desert, they all saw God at Mount Sinai. It says they were a generation of experience. Und sie haben Gaven in their Madrega from Moshe Rabbeinu. And all of them, to a certain degree, were at the level of Moses. They all saw God at Mount Sinai. Was had Gehad Ria, and Moses had seeing. He saw God. Right? What does it say? We're going to learn next week. Panim b'panim. Next week's Torah portion, we repeat the Ten Commandments. And before that, it says, face to face, you saw God. Aber there, but ever the Dora Shenichtas La'aretz, the generation which was coming into the land of Israel now, was they have been showing Gehat zu Tan mit Gashmis, which they are now going to deal with the physical world. They're coming into the land of Israel. They also fought a lot of battles right before they came in. The Sichon, Og, the Midianites, Midian, had by Zay, Bemele, Gedarft, in them Inyan, from Ria, I'm sorry, had by Zay, Bemele, Gefelt, I'm sorry, they, by them was lacking this whole thing of seeing godliness. They weren't at Mount Sinai, this generation. They weren't at Sinai. There were some of them that were Mount Sinai, but they were all under 20 years old. So it wasn't, they weren't actually mature in the sense that they were fit to be soldiers. The Jews were counted from 20 to 60. So only those people. So especially the ones that were under 20, in a way, they did not experience godliness the same way as the ones that were over. So everybody that was 20 years old and up, over, at the time that the sin of the Meraglim, the spies, they all died. This is a new generation. Most of them just heard about the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. They didn't see the big miracles. They didn't go across the Red Sea, the Yam Suf, where it says that everybody saw God. Right? Zekei Van Veil, they pointed. By Zay is given Mernid Bishmia. This generation that was going into the land of Israel, they only heard about godliness. Azoy v'yashted, like it says, Ata Yisrael Shema. If you look at the beginning of the book of Shar Yichud Ve'emunah, he also explains over there that Moses really wanted the Jews coming to the land of Israel to have this feeling of seeing God, but he didn't do it, so he had to say Shema. The chiluk between Riyah and Shmiel, what's the difference between seeing and hearing? A b'shas meant zetazach, when a person sees something, is thus believable. It could be unlimited. In them is nitakain metzarim b'gavulos. You can show the most stupid person in the world, right? He sees a rocket ship going up in the air, right? A rocket ship, he goes and he checks it out. The thing weighs how many tens of thousands of tons, and all of a sudden it goes up in the air, right? So he sees it. On the other hand, another person, you tell him about it. I was there and I saw it, but he didn't himself see it. Once a person sees something, seeing is without any limit. Thus says this means as kain inyan vet im nit riren from Ort, that if you really saw something, then nothing can possibly move him. As bayim zolan veren sfekas, there'll be any doubts in that, right? Someone comes and tells him, I saw a rocket ship. It went up from Cape Canaveral, wherever they sent them up, and it weighed about, they say it weighed about, through 30,000 tons. And there was this big fire came out the back, and all of a sudden it lifted up and it went to the moon. So you saw this? Yeah, I saw it, right? It says, okay, the one who saw it, he knows that he saw it. Nothing can shake him. But the person who just heard it secondhand, he goes and he tells somebody, you know what? I just heard that there's a thing, a rocket ship, and recording. Okay, so the person who heard it, he goes and he tells his friend, you know what? I just heard that there's a thing called a rocket ship, weighs thousands of tons, and there's a big fire comes out. Another person says, you're crazy out of your mind. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. So this person who just heard, he didn't see, as he could be dissuaded. But the person who saw, he says, listen, I know what I saw. That's why in Judaism, in order to have a court case, it has to be witnesses that actually saw. It can't be people that heard, right? I heard from a very reliable source that Joe owes Sam money. Very reliable source. It's not good. If you saw the transaction, that's different. Is b'chach b'shas ma'isa, in the time when a deed is done, wird the inyan vos hert abgelegt by him. When a person sees something, then he is certain of it. From deswegen, nevertheless, is durach akasha. Yeah, I'm sorry. When a person hears something, then when he's hearing it, as he's certain. But nevertheless, if someone comes and asks a question by him, their inyan is upgefragt. It could be that it'll knock down, right? The person who just heard about the rocket ship goes and tells his friend, and he says, "Oh yeah, did you see this yourself?" No. He said, "Tell me, did you ever try to lift up your car?" He says, "No, I didn't." He says, "Come on, did you ever see you light a fire?" Yes, a fire makes things go up. You ever light a fire underneath uh, your car? You ever see the car goes up? Maybe if there's gasoline, it'll blow up. Things don't go up in the air because of fire. He says, "Oh yeah, really? Yeah, that's it." He knocked down the whole thing. As oich b'shas di zach is by him upgelegt, but by when the person it's very certain is their inyan by him bagrenister. But when he hears something and he's certain only because of hearing, so therefore it's limited. But when he sees it, then it's unlimited, right? You can say, a person can say, "Listen, if you light a cigarette, listen, I don't know what you're talking about, but I know that I saw the rocket ship go up." The same thing in Mount Sinai. Everybody saw God. They saw God. That's it. You can't tell them that God does not exist. For sure, God exists. On the other hand, the people who just heard about it, it could be that they can be dissuaded. Of course, what's the disadvantage? Disadvantage is a person that sees something, he doesn't really understand the details. He just knows what he saw. On the other hand, the person who hears, he can ask all sorts of questions and says, therefore, and the generation coming into the land of Israel, they only heard about the giving of the Torah. They only heard that God gave the Torah, like us. We only heard about it. The people that saw it, they really saw it. That was only one generation that actually saw it. And that generation already died. Therefore is in Mishnah Torah, therefore is in the book of Deuteronomy, was es is gesagt geworden, which was spoken to a generation going into Israel, that they had only heard godliness, heard about giving the Torah, heard about that God took them out of Egypt in Elokus. They only heard about God. Hat men ze gedarft an anzogen. They had to be told oif dominion from Mesirus Nefesh Vadoma. Therefore, they had to be given all sorts of new commandments and new ideas, self-sacrifice, and etc. Was dem Dora Midbar, which is the generation of the desert, hat man das nit gedarft anzogen. You didn't have to be commanded. They knew about godliness. They knew what God said. They were sure that God said it. They had no doubts. From deswegen, but nevertheless, Chaj their door shenichnasu eretz is given nidruker, but because the generation that was coming into the land of Israel, that they only heard about God, and they are a lower generation, so to speak, from the generation of the desert, who had seen God, is bazeh given a mila. But nevertheless, this lower generation, they had some sort of a good quality. Nevertheless, Chaj their door shenichnasu eretz is given nidruker, even though that they were lower, but they had something, an advantage. What was their advantage? Therefore, state by the Bor Midbar, it says by the generation that was in the desert, says that the generation that was in the desert, they did not come to the final goal. Was does is given in Shiloh, Yerushalayim. They were not allowed, they didn't have the opportunity to build a permanent temple in Shiloh. This is before, it was there for 369 years. In Jerusalem, it was there for 410 years, then 420 years. Nor das is wie ze sein and shoin a Rhine in Eretz Israel. This is, they could only build a temple only when they were in the land of Israel. In other words, the generation that was in the desert, they were much higher as far as certainty that God exists. They had experience. They knew for sure God exists and that God took them from Egypt and God gave them the Torah. Their experience with God was firsthand, which is not the case the generations going into the land of Israel that was secondhand. But the generation going into the land of Israel, they could build a permanent place for God. Their time is, the reason is, Valdurach there you read it, because of this descent. Vozei haben angeheben zutan, which they began to be involved with physical things, be Rita Madrigos coming down, davka durch them, only by means of this, feared sich ois the amisis kavana, is carried out the true intention, their binyan menucha v'nachala, the place which is the final revelation, permanent revelation of God in the world. That's the whole idea of the Beit HaMikdash, the holy temple, which I think the holy temple is a misnomer, because the word Beit HaMikdash, it doesn't say, Migdal HaMikdash or something like that. It says Beit HaMikdash, the holy house, the house which makes holy. Migdash, the house which has been holy. But anyway, it's a holy house. Beit means a house. And they took a physical house, bricks and cement, and they built it exactly to God's specifications. And when things are done according to God's specifications, as God reveals himself there. That's the idea of the commandments. The ultimate commandment is the holy temple, a physical thing that's exactly according to the way God wants it. Kumtoi, so it comes out. So God, of course, is eternal. Kumtoi, so it comes out as their inyan from Shabbos Parshas Devarim, this whole Torah portion. They're on at the beginning from Mishnah Torah, from the book of Deuteronomy, Veistov, for Einikin from Tzvei Inyanim Havchim, shows on unifying two opposites. As is a Yerida Gedola, on one hand, it's a tremendous descent. The Jews, they did not see God, and now they're going to be occupied with physical things in the world. And in the desert, they saw God, and God provided all their food for them and surrounded them and protected them and gave them water and etc. So these people are coming down, they're lower, but durach them, you read it, but only by means of this descent, durach them, davka, only by means of this, is the amitis ha'eliyah, is the true elevation. And one simple reason is when they were in the desert, they didn't have to really believe in God. They saw God, they saw the miracles. They weren't tested at all. And when they came into the land of Israel, they didn't see God. They just heard the commandments that God had given to Moses. And basically they only saw Moses. And Moses was not there anymore. He was dead. They only had Joshua. So therefore the people had to come from their inside to take the physical world and their physical personality and and elevate it. Their Zel B'inyan, the same thing as also this Shabbos, this coming Shabbat Chazon. Was is in Zainer, was in Im, Zainer Faran, which in this coming Shabbat, there are both opposites. On one hand, is there in the 9 Tag, it's one of the 9 days. In our case, it's the day right before Tisha B'Av. Not always, is it? But in any case, it's in the 9 days right before Tisha B'Av. It's one of the days after the first of. We're in the month of. So these are bad days, terrible days. The first temple was destroyed. Second temple was destroyed. The Jews were sent into exile, wandering around, completely confused. Noch mehr, even more. This is the Shabbos was far Tisha B'Av. This is the Shabbos right before Tisha B'Av. There's Mana Chorban, the time of the destruction of the temple. But from Tzveitetzai, but on the other hand, is durach them only by means of this descent, ved zayin their tachlis ha'aliyah. Can there be the ultimate elevation. Wie gesagt, like it says in the name of Rav Levi Yitzchak Ruditchev, that on this Shabbos, it is shown to us from a distance the third temple. Was is Hecher, which is higher from the Friedeker, which the third temple will be higher than even the first and the second temple. Yibana may it be built quickly in our days. This the Rebbe said in 1955. Menat Shoin Amol Geret, we spoke previously. Wegen dem was der Inyan Atzvus from Bein HaMatzorim darf nicht sein Shabbos. It says in these 9 days, and really in the 3 weeks, a Jew is supposed to be externally sad. What are you sad about? Because the temple is destroyed. The Jewish people are scattered all over the world. The situation is terrible. It's terrible. Jews don't even know what the Torah is. They don't believe that God is. They're all confused. They think that they grab at these weird identities and right, do terrible things. Our leaders are awful. But there was a situation in the world now. Oh, it is. So it makes, and why is all that? Because the temple was destroyed. If the temple was not destroyed, we would know who we are. We have our identity. True, when the temple was there, the Jews also had big temptations that they didn't resist. But the fact of the matter is now we make up our own temptations. So that because the temple was destroyed. So these 3 weeks, you should feel bad. In the 3 weeks, you should feel bad. Now, a Jew is always supposed to be happy. You have to serve God with happiness. But now, how are we serving God? What does God want? He wants us that we should be on these 3 weeks sad, mourning. Let's not say either one of those. Let's say very overly serious. But there should be at least a little bit of that. Not to forget that we're in the 3 weeks. But not on Shabbos. Well, Shabbos, because on Shabbos, Darv sign Simcha, you have to be revealed happiness. The rest of the time, you have to have concealed happiness. You're happy that you're a Jew. You're happy you can do what God wants. Right? You're happy that you're trying to do what God wants. Unach mer, and even more, as dem Shabbos, that this Shabbos Darv sign, the Simcha nor mer, this Shabbos has to be noch mer, even more, this coming Shabbat, because it's the Shabbat in the 9 days, wie in the other Shabbos, which is in the other Shabbos, is b'chadei, in order, as zal nit zayin kein chashash, there shouldn't be any even suspicion, as the heder simcha, that the lack of happiness comes because of the 9 days. Shabbat, you're not supposed to be sad. You have to forget all of your problems. Kol melechtacha asuya. So one second, this Shabbos comes in the middle of the 9 days. I mean, you're supposed to be sad. No sadness on Shabbos. Not internally, not externally, no way. And even more, I'll tell you something. If usually in the usual months, the Shabbos is in the course of the year, sometimes you're a little bit, you think about, you get a little bit serious, overly serious, get a little bit, yeah. So, okay, the rest of the Shabbos of the year, okay, it's excusable. The person he thought about his financial situation or something, you're not supposed to do it. But okay, that's nature. But this Shabbos, you have to be happy. And if you're not, maybe it might be interpreted that you're in mourning for the temple. And that you're not supposed to do on Shabbos. So what's the antidote? The antidote is this Shabbos, you have to be extra happy. You have to force yourself to be happy. Their biur in them, the explanation, penibus inyan, internally is Shabbos is me'ayin lasid lavo. Shabbos is like the world to come. I'll tell you what it's like. It's not like, let's say you have a yeshiva, there's going to come a very important person, a rich person is going to come. He's going to give money to the yeshiva. Rich person, right? He's given millions, he's going to come. But when he comes in, as you start smiling, you have to show you're smiling, you're happy, you're a Jew, you're learning Torah, you're smiling, you're positive, and you're happy to see him. You're faking it. It's a big lie. You're not happy. You're not happy. You're happy. If he gives the money, you'll be happy, but you don't know if he is. You're tense. You don't know if he's going to come, and you heard about this person also. You don't really like him. You've heard that he did things that are not, but he gives money to yeshivas. So he says, everything he says, you laugh. And now that you're more happy when this person comes in than in the rest of the year, the whole rest of the year. Why? Because you have to show him there's not any sadness in your personality. You're a totally positive person and you make a good impression on him. So you have to, well, that's this Shabbos also. This Shabbos is, there's reason to be sad. But Shabbos, you have to be happy. Shabbos is your guest. It's your precious guest. So there's a reason. Maybe you heard bad things about the temple was destroyed. Shabbos, you have to be happy. So this Shabbos, you have to be doubly happy. You have to be happy. It says, because Latid in the future, vet doch sein a geula, there's going to be a redemption, but often as it vet nit bleben kein roshem, that there's not going to be any trace whatsoever from them gullahs, from the exile, right? This rich person, he's going to give you money for your yeshiva. You're never going to be sad again. You're never going to be lacking. Oh, so you're happy. Yeah, you heard this person did all sorts of not good things. Now he's here. You're happy. The same thing. Shabbos is here. You have to be happy. Shabbos comes from Hashem. You heard, Hashem destroyed the temple. Hey, maybe we should be, look, no. Hashem is going to rebuild it. He's going to give a big, huge donation. This Shabbos, you have to not show any signs. Shabbos is the Hashem is visiting you. You have to be happy. You have to be happy. Therefore, Shabbos also in Shabbos, darf nit sein the inyan from Bein HaMetzorim. This Shabbos, you have to be extra happy. Das is doch aber mehr nit ve'abir. This is just an explanation why this Shabbos darfen nit sein the inyanim. There should not be any hint of anything that is the opposite of happiness. Der Biroif dem, was dem Shabbos darf sein simcha, the mirror. We just really explain why you shouldn't show any sadness. Why do we have to show an extra happiness? Extra happiness this Shabbos is because, I sort of explained it too, but as is the vase, the Rebbe is going to have a different explanation. As is bewusst, it's known as the geula was nachen galus, that this redemption, which is going to come after the exile, bringt zu hechram matzav is higher, visi is given farm galus before his exile. In other words, here we're saying what, the example I said, you fake it. You fake that you're happy. You fake that you're this. You're not really, don't think about the exile. You have to really show an extra happiness. This Shabbos, you have to dance a little bit. You have to sing a little bit. You have to be happy this Shabbos. It says that's why, because it's a mitzvah. You're not supposed to be sad. But says the Rebbe, but there's a reason to be genuinely happy. Genuinely happy. Not just to fake it. Right? Even if the rich person doesn't give you any money, the Shabbos comes. Nevertheless, there's a reason to be genuinely happy. What is it? Because this exile that we're in now is really serving a big purpose. The fact that the temple was destroyed, that this is really serving a purpose. We're only going to understand this, what I'm about to say now, when Moshiach comes, because it's not understandable. The suffering is not a thing you can just sort of philosophize away and, okay, so you've been suffering 2,000 years, but it's going to be, you'll see it's all going to be worth it. I mean, suffering you can't understand. But when Moshiach comes, he says it will be understandable. It'll all make sense. It says that the future redemption is going to be much, much higher than anything we've possibly experienced. And it's because of this exile that we're in. Sort of like what we learned over here. The coming into Israel brought the higher revelation of the permanent temple. Barum oib ez zolzaim. Because if you want that there should be. One second, what happened? What happened? 1 second. Did I skip? No. 1 minute. What did I skipped 2 pages over here. All right. Here. Okay. So, because Varum, because Oib as Zol Zain. D. If there can be the Zalbazak Befria. Oh, I see. I skipped 2 pages. If it will be the same thing as it was before, as darf man doch in ganzen nit haben de Golas. That after the exile, it's going to be better. It's going to be better. So that sort of breaks down my analogy that I made to the rich person coming in. The rich person coming in, you're getting rid of a bad thing. The yeshiva has debts. The rich person is going to come and going to take care of the debts. So everybody's smiling. Here we're saying that the debts that we're in now in the exile, it's really a good thing. It's not just the goal is not just to get rid of the bad things and that it should be the way it was before. Because if it was the way before, then it comes out that God is sort of not nice. I mean, we didn't have to have the whole exile in the first place. He just sort of tortured us, and the same thing as it was before, just stop torturing us. That's why we have to be happy. No. Okay, you do it like it's known, that God destroying something is in order to build something better. As their binyan, she'achrei astira is hecher, vias is given, kodem stira. There's a law in Shabbos, you're not allowed to wreck things. You're not allowed to wreck things. It says, but really it's only forbidden from the Torah if you wreck something in order to build something better. If you're just wrecking something for the sake of wrecking it, it's not forbidden from the Torah. That's true. A true wrecking something, right, is wrecking it in order to build something better. That's what it is. So also this exile that we've been in, that God, he wrecked our peace of mind and our identity and the feeling of Judaism and our connection to God. It's all been wrecked. But he did it in order, that's the idea of exile. But he did it in order to build something better. So in other words, it's not just that God's going to come and take away all of our problems. No, exactly. He's going to show why all these problems were the most precious thing in the world, that if we didn't have them, we would not be able to come to this new level, what's going to be after the future redemption. What is this new level? It's hinted at in the writings of Chassidut, of seeing God, feeling godliness in everything. And that's what the teachings of Chassidut are, to understand God, a preview of what's going to be in the days of the Moshiach. Das is Bechlal, this is in general in regarding every single redemption from an exile. As Nochdem Geula, that after the redemption, it's higher than it was before the exile. Like the previous Rebbe said, right? If you would give me all the money in the world to relinquish one moment of the experience that I had in prison, even though I wouldn't go back there even for 1 second for all the money in the world, but to relinquish the experience, I wouldn't give for all the money in the world. It was so valuable, the experience. So it will be also, does this afilus a geula, was achrei a gaolos, even any type of redemption, which is after, for instance, going out of Egypt. The Jews left Egypt. The previous Rebbe going out of prison. Is das hecher, a person comes out improved. I mean, if he succeeds and he doesn't go crazy, he comes out improved from how he was in the exile. Mitzad dem birur and nitzutzos, because of the purification of the sparks of meaning that were trapped in the exile. In other words, he was in a situation where he really had to hold on to his Judaism. He really had to hold on to his identity, and he did. He comes out with a new awareness of reality. But Kol Shechen, how much more so when we're talking about the future redemption. The future redemption is going to be a different type of redemption than anything we've experienced, even the Jews going out of Egypt. I mean, you have to realize the Jews going out of Egypt was a very serious matter. It was a very 210 years they were slaves. They were born slaves. They had no idea that there was anything else. A Jew was synonymous with slave, right? The Jew didn't come in today. That's why the floor is dirty, right? You want somebody to fix the roof? Call the Jew, right? The Jew he was the servant. All of a sudden, with God, and God, the creator of the universe, took them all out of Egypt, split the sea, gave them big revelations, Mount Sinai. That's incredible. That's just incredible. A jump from being a slave to being connected to the creator of the universe. Says the Rebbe, well, that's nothing compared to what it's going to be, the future redemption that we're waiting. Nothing. And it's going to happen. We believe it's going to happen. The future redemption, Vostas, is a geula. This will be a complete redemption. There won't be any exile after it. There won't even be death. Even more, the people that already died will come back. And this sounds like it's not Judaism. It's not normal. But that's reality. That, in fact, is the essence of Judaism, one of the 13 principles of faith. Right? They believe in the coming of the Moshiach. And another one is we believe the dead will raise. 13 principles of faith. If you don't believe it, you're missing one of the foundations of Jewish faith. What is it going to be? How is it going to be? Says the Rebbe. It's so incomprehensible that we can't explain it. But one thing for sure is it's coming because of the suffering, the exile that we're in now. So it's certain as Durachtam Geula that from the redemption will be a totally new type of awareness of reality. A naya inyan, a new thing. We'll see how precious this physical world is. That God is creating every detail. We'll see the godliness, the meaning, and everything. Azoy inyan was dorten is a ganzen nit shayach kein galus. It'll be a level of revelation that is not relevant, that it'll be concealed or confused or hidden. A feeling of connection with the Creator and a feeling of value, self-value that's incomprehensible. Right? That we'll see how precious we are. God is creating us. And not just us, each and every one of us, and not just the Jews, every single human being. Was for them, Galus, that was far them Galus, which before we wanted to exile, there wasn't this such a light. Varia and Raya, what's the proof? As is doch given speter a Galus, that God had to make an exile, and we believe that God is good. Aber durch dem Gula, but through the future redemption, wird nimshach azoyin, there will be drawn such a thing, was his hecher and ganze, which will be totally higher, as is nit shayach mer kein Galus, that won't be relevant. There can be any exile. It's something like, anything that there is that you do in the world that requires you to learn or to change, and so you have to work hard. Right? People, they in order to get healthy, to be perform in sports, so they're grimacing week after week, month after month, hard work. They can't go and do normal things they want to do. They have to suffer and work and do push-ups and this and calisthenics in order they can do the same thing. A person's practicing piano, he has to go over and over and do things. He loves harmony. Here he doesn't get anything. He just makes all these mistakes, and but nevertheless, it was worth it for what's going to be afterwards. But all those things, the result is comparable to the effort. Here we're talking about a result that's totally incomparable to the effort. What is the effort? 2,000 years of suffering. And the result is going to be something incomparable even to going to heaven, the highest levels. That we'll feel who we really are. We'll feel that why God is creating us every instant. Why is he creating us? So we'll be his partners, that he'll activate us. Ubemela is doch Shabbos, versus the Bein HaMetzurim, this Shabbos, which comes in these 3 weeks, between these difficult times of Yud Zayin Tammuz, and 3 weeks later, Yud Zayin Tammuz was when the walls were breached in Jerusalem, and Tisha B'Av is when the temples were destroyed. In between these times are very difficult times, but nevertheless, the fact is Zayin Inyan, and as air is Meir Latid Lavo, that the true purpose of it will only shine to us in the future, but it's there. Yom Shekula Shabbos, the day that's totally Shabbos, and therefore, Darv Zayin Demolt Asimcha Yetera. Therefore, there will be a tremendous joy because we're experiencing a little bit on this Shabbos of the amazing light that comes because of the darkness. While they're in from them Shabbos, because the whole thing of this Shabbos is Netinat Koach, that it gives us power, inspiration, motivation to Mahapech Zayin the Beina Mitzorim, to transform this difficult 3 weeks into joy and happiness. While they're Gile, because the revelation of light, which is going to be in the future, the revelation of the truth, of godliness, which will be in the future, Velche is on and Gansen, Hecher, which is totally higher from anything that we've ever experienced before, even the going out of Egypt. It's higher than any sort of exile and redemption that we've ever had before. Hat Bekoach zu Mahapech Zayin der Beina Mitzorim, has the power to transform these terrible times and anything terrible into joy and happiness. How that's going to be, I don't know, but it should be as soon as possible, because there's a lot of unhappiness and pain and frustration in the world. A lot. And it's being caused by this terrible exile that we're in. And according to what we believe, that's it. We've been believing this for the last almost 2,000 years. But that's the idea of belief, of faith, emunah. And that's the basis of Judaism. Abraham believed in God, even though God just did terrible things to him. Sacrifice yourself, kill your son, get thrown in a fiery furnace. Nobody wants that. What type of religion is that? That's Jewish emunah, Jewish faith. Und das ist euch, was es wird, abgepaskent. In Shulchan Aruch, that's why it says there's a law in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Jewish law book, as Shabbos Shebein Mitzorim, that these Shabbatot in these 3 weeks, Megmen Machan Asuda Shlema B'Shaita. You're allowed to, and in fact you're supposed to, make a meal with wine and meat. Those things you don't eat in the 3 weeks. We don't eat wine and meat. But on the Shabbatot, you can make meal like King Solomon had when he was ruling. Was B'yamei Shlomo, in the days of Shlomo, was Kaimish Sarah B'Shlemusa. It says in the days of King Solomon, it says that the moon was full. What does it mean? The Jewish people were the way they were supposed to be. Everyone respected, valued, treasured the Jewish people, because they knew that the peace and the welfare of the world depended, and the blessing depended on the Jews. That was because of King Solomon, that he built the first temple. It says that then it was real happiness, right? It says that's something like the real happiness we're going to have when the third temple. And that's what we get a little bit of a shine of this Shabbat. The Shabbat Zu is Faran and Atinat Koach. This Shabbos is actually giving us energy, life, like we said, the motivation, inspiration. As a yamim elu yafchu l'sasam v'simcha, that these days really will transform to joy and happiness with Moshiach now. Yechi Adonenu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach le'olam vo'ed. Here we go. Let's learn the Yom Yom today. A Yom Yom. Let's do today and tomorrow. The sacred, one of the letters in Igeres HaKodesh, in the Tanya, the fourth book of the Tanya, was written, there's 5 books, right? The fourth book of the Tanya, this was written 10 years before the letter which says Katonti. Katonti was written when the first Rebbe of Chabad got out of prison. When he got out of prison. And and this, the Potchim Babracha, this was written in 10 years after that. right? The Alter Rebbe, he got out of prison. It was, I guess, 1899. And 10 years after that, it was 1809. And the Rebbe, he passed away in, I'm sorry, 1799. Wow, I don't know what's going on with the dates lately. The Alter Rebbe got out of prison in 1799. He passed away, and he said this next letter that he wrote, which is printed in the Tanya, in the fourth book of the Tanya, 10 years later. And that would have been in 1809. And in 1813, 14, he passed away. In general, just to learn the here's for Shabbat. Yes. The sixth remembrance that we said every day, we say at Shabbat festivals, we have to remember, right? 6 things. Remember going out of Egypt. We have to remember being in Mount Sinai. We have to remember Amalek. We have to remember what God did to Miriam, etc. Oh, how we made trouble for God in the desert. From my grandfather's aphorism, what good is Hasidus and piety if you haven't got love of another Jew? Even if you know all of the books, loving another Jew is the essence, especially causing anguish to another Jew. The whole Hasidut is worth nothing. Therefore, we see how important it is to take others into consideration, other people's feelings. Have a good Shabbos. And on Sunday, we will not learn. It's going to be Tisha B'Av. Either, God forbid, if Moshiach doesn't come, as it's forbidden to learn Torah. And if he does come, then we'll be busy rejoicing and dancing around in the streets, going to Jerusalem. Huh? So God willing, we'll see each other on a Monday, Yom Sheni. And if you really want to learn, you missed your plane or something to Jerusalem, or the plane is leaving the next day, so you can look at all the past classes and you can learn from that. Have a good day and a good Shabbat and a happy Tisha B'Av with Moshiach now.
Thank you, Rebbe. Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.